All right, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
We are so delighted that you joined us this afternoon for our health and wellness panel. I am Christy Roberts Lewis, and I have the pleasure of serving on the Health and Wellness Committee. And so today we're going to have a delightful discussion with these wonderful panelists who will introduce themselves as they speak. But before they do, I want to introduce you to Nicole Short, who is a registered dietitian and nutritionist from Aladdin, who's going to give us a brief presentation.
Well, they won't hear you on the screen, so if you'll grab that mic from the screen.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Nicole. I am the registered dietitian for Aladdin Campus Dining. So Aladdin Campus Dining is your dining services here. So I'm just here. Thank you for having me and thank you for the invite. I know today we wanted to do a quick little talk on, eating healthy on a budget, and kind of want to tell you a little bit about our programs here on campus. So I was here last year, so thank you for having me again. Some things I wanted to really talk about today was really encouraging plant-based eating. Plant-based eating does anybody kind of know what that is or have heard about it or have an idea? Okay. Do you think it's just being a vegetarian or vegan? Okay, great. You guys are really smart. Because some people think that it means being a vegetarian or only eating fruits and vegetables. Being plant-based means that you are making majority of your foods, majority of your plate with every meal plant-based. So you're always including whole foods first. I think that's always the best practice. Always making sure at least half of your plate is fruits or vegetables. That's really how we should be eating. That's the My Plate. If you guys have kids in school, that is what the government is teaching students how to eat now. It should always be half of your plate should be those fruits or vegetables. It could be cooked or raw. And then a quarter of your plate should be carbohydrates. So we still do need carbohydrates. Carbohydrates get such a bad rep for the past, I would say, over 20 years. Carbs are bad for you. You gain weight from carbs. Should I do keto? Those are a lot of the questions that I get all the time. You still need carbohydrates. So I always like to tell people, what carbohydrates should we really be eating? Does anybody have an idea of kind of what carbohydrates we should be eating? Are ones that are better for you? Sweet potatoes, ooh, I love that one. Sweet potatoes, why? Because they're a little bit higher in fiber. They have a lot of vitamin A as opposed to your regular potatoes. It doesn't mean that regular potatoes are bad for you, but it just means those are better options. So that's really how I teach people how to eat. All my students, get a little bit of carbohydrates. Half of your plate should be vegetables and then a lean protein source. So a protein such as it could be beans. Beans are also a great source of protein. Chicken, turkey, lean cuts of beef. Those are the kind of leaner options. And if you are a vegetarian, soy and tofu in moderation. Edamame, those type of things. Just having more plants incorporated into your diet is really super important. We're seeing more of this plant-based diet in the past, basically, I would say 5 years, really. It kind of follows similar to the Mediterranean diet. I don't know if anybody remembers that one. But why we're seeing more of encouraging plant-based diets or plant-based foods is because we're seeing a high rise of colon cancer. Where people are not eating enough fiber, and fiber is where you're really going to get most of your fiber from those plant-based foods. So all your fruits, your vegetables, your legumes, which like your lentils, black beans, chickpeas, hummus, all those things are really going to have a little bit more fiber than your other food options. So that's why you may be hearing a lot more about plant-based foods, just incorporating more fiber. Can anybody guess how much fiber we need per day in grams? It's a dietitian hard question. 25 grams of fiber per day is recommended for the average individual. Can you guess how much America on average is getting? 10. Right? So we're not even halfway there. So that's why I really encourage you, when you're looking at your food labels, look at how much fiber's in there. So I always compare like an apple. It's not to those bags of 100 calorie, I don't know if they make them anymore, but they used to have those 100 calorie packs. An apple's about 90 calories, 100 calories. But when you're looking at foods, always look at, okay, the apple's gonna be a little bit more nutritious for me because it has those vitamins and minerals, and then it has 3 grams of fiber. So just really trying to add more fiber into your diet, adding more plant-based is really just a wholesome healthy eating, as well as being on a budget, right? We know how costly protein is right now, with our eggs being a crazy amount. I'm sure it's like $10 or $15 now. Who even knows? Last time I went to Whole Foods, they didn't have any eggs. So just really, really incorporating more beans. There are superfood. Dietitians always use that word superfood because they're not only a protein, but they're also a carbohydrate. So you will get some energy from your beans. And it doesn't mean that you're just eating beans every day, rice and beans, or creating meals only with beans. You can start incorporating those into your protein meals as well. I had we did lentil tacos here last year for our wellness event, and somebody told me that for their kids, they did mix like their little bit of taco meat with the lentils, so that gave the kids a little bit more fiber and added protein. So there's different ways adding beans into your salads, adding chickpeas, adding hummus to sandwiches. Those are little ways that you can start incorporating more plants into your diet. So that's what I really am encouraging today, is that we just really on a whole just eat more plants. I think a lot of times we get confused with all the diets out there, and I think that's the best place to start is, am I getting enough vegetables? Am I including vegetables in every one of my meals? So that's a great way to start if you really want to start eating healthy and caring about your health and wellness. And just a little quick thing about our program here. We are encouraging more of it, but right now, our Be Well program, does anybody eat in the dining hall? No. Okay, if you do, you look at the menus, if you see a little blueberry icon, those are our healthy menu options for you guys. All of those blueberry icons, all of those recipes were created by registered dietitians. They are also always a high fiber food, maybe a lean protein, so it's not only vegan or vegetarian, and it's mindful of salt and it has no trans fats. So those are the foods that if you really want to eat healthy today, took a look over the menu today. They did have a tofu vegetable stir fry, and they also had their carrots were our Be Well items. So yes, we are continuing to work on getting more of our Be Well items into the cafeteria, but they do have to have at least one every day. So please be on the lookout for those options. We also do more wellness events now too. We have Ava in the front that's doing a beautiful job. She does marketing for Aladdin, and she's actually here on campus at all times. So she does a lot of the Be Well events if I can't make it, and she will be promoting our healthy recipes as well. So be on the lookout for that. Even if you are not dining with us, we do free samples, so that's a way that you can try some of our Be Well recipes. Do I have any questions from you guys? No? All right.
Corn syrup, things of that nature. How should we be looking at that?
I think the best thing to look at when you're looking at an ingredients label, look for those added sugars, right? So something maybe have total sugars, like I drank a natural juice today, but that's because fruits do have natural sugars in them. It's the added sugars that we should be concerned about, like your fructose and your glucose that they're adding into there. That means they're actually taking a tablespoon or teaspoon of sugar and adding it to those drinks. I was actually a little frightened. I had a ginger ale the other day, and I don't drink soda, and it had 48 grams of added sugar. 1 tablespoon of sugar is 7 grams. Teaspoon. So just do the math. And I just really kind of opened my eyes. Even as a dietitian, I still get surprised. I've been practicing for 8 years now, and I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, soda really does have a lot of sugar. So just always look for those added sugars is really important. And I also think to talk about labels, I think this is really important. We have so many things now when we go to the grocery. My sister actually sent this to me. She bought something for my nephews, and it said gluten-free. It said gluten-free, fat-free, so she thought it was healthy for my nephews. And when you looked at the added sugar, it was like a crazy amount of sugar. And then it had all the additives and the food dyes. So now the whole thing for the past 5 to 6 years is gluten-free. So people think that not eating gluten is healthy, but that's not necessarily true. So I always say do your research, read your labels, and buy things there you understand it. Or we have so many great resources like ChatGPT and the internet right now. If you don't understand the label, or if it's more than 6 to 7 ingredients, really what are we eating? And I always got that question yesterday as well at a presentation about Impossible Burgers, because my presentation yesterday was on plant-based eating. And it was Impossible burgers, as opposed to a regular burger. What do I think is healthier? I think that's a really tough question, but then it's also like, okay, I'm not encouraging red meat. I don't work for any cow or dairy companies, but also looking at a lean piece of meat, like 90 to 95% lean, as opposed to Impossible Burger, which has over 17 ingredients, right? So just really being mindful, because there's so much information out there, guys. Most of my job as a dietitian, campus dietitian, corporate dietitian, with all these schools that I have in Georgia, is fighting social media. Fighting TikTok is 90% of my job. We have our services, Ask a Dietitian, as well, where students and faculty and staff can email me, and the questions I get on there. I saw this influencer doing this, and I'm not saying there's some people that aren't dietitians that may have some great information, but just always be mindful, because we are the ones that study nutrition for at least 4 years and had to sit for an exam and licensing and all that. So just being mindful. There's so much out there right now. It's like, whew, the older dietitians probably had a little bit easier than us with all the internet that we experience. That's a good question. I would say, because of, especially with the high rise of diabetes right now. So the added sugars and the carbohydrates is what we would really have to watch. Our bodies still need fats, but this is a type of fats that we're eating. So with fats, it would be like your healthier fats, like an omega-3 and omega-6s, walnuts, salmon, avocados. But I would say it's not worse, or I don't like to say good or bad for you, because you also want to watch your fat intake, right? A lot of items do not have trans fats anymore, but you want to look for items that are low in saturated fat, and they may be higher in fat, but just look at the type of fat that it is, because it might be a good fat, like avocados. Good question. Any other questions?
One more question, please. You brought up red dye or dyes when it comes to reading the labels. Can you discuss more about that, please?
Sure, that's a great question. We are seeing a lot of research now that red dyes lead to ADHD and autism. So they are finding that a lot of states are actually getting rid of it. I think Colorado just passed, or Utah, don't quote me, that they will not be serving it in their schools anymore. So that means, what does that mean for Kellogg's? They're probably not going to be happy. A lot of our Fruit Loops and a lot of those cereals have added dyes. So me as a dietitian, I try my best not to eat them, but everything in moderation. If I have a sweet tooth and I feel for a little Sour Patch, I'm gonna eat it, but I'm also like, that's not something that's in my diet on a regular basis. So just being mindful and doing your research on that, because they're finding a lot more research with ADHD related to the dyes. Great question. Well, thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure being invited again, and I hope you enjoy your dining with us at Aladdin Campus Dining.
Thank you, Nicole. That was really great information, and I was excited because I had fish and salad until you brought up ginger ale, which I have right here next to me. So I guess I will discard that after the panel discussion. Today, we are joined by this distinguished panel, and we have several questions that are based on categories where they have some experience or expertise. And I won't start in any particular order, but as I call on your category, would you please introduce yourself and your title prior to answering the question? So we're going to start with occupational well-being. How can individuals create a healthier work-life balance in high-stress careers?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Mary Roberts. I'm the Executive Director for Career and Leadership Development here at Middle Georgia State University. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about occupational wellness. One thing to keep in mind is that occupational wellness encompasses not just work, but it's also your volunteer activities. So maybe things you do outside of work that support your vocational interests. It may also even be your academic work. So if you're going to school and learning, and that's adding to maybe your occupational knowledge, that can be considered occupational wellness as well. So we tell our students, find something you love, right? But there's mixed messages out there of, well, find something that's going to make money. You've got to have something that pays the bills. So it's important to have a little bit of both, right? You want to make sure you're doing something that you enjoy, that you're using your skills, you feel valued, you feel like you're doing important work, and that looks different to everyone. We all do that in different ways. But then at the same time, okay, so are you getting your financial needs met? You know, do you have insurance? Do you have benefits that help you stay healthy and well? And so it's all of those things that you need to consider when you are, you know, whether you're starting out in your career and then as you go forward. And if you're not happy in a situation, if you're not getting those things, then setting goals for yourself and making sure that you can get those things you need from something else. And that's where, you know, sometimes that volunteer part comes in, that, okay, I've got my financial needs met, I'm making all the money, but, you know, my occupation, there's certain things I'm not fulfilled with. And sometimes that's where people do they do volunteer, and then that fills everything out for them.
All right, thank you, Mary. Carlos is snapping. He likes the snaps after comments, so audience, feel free to join in with us. Our next question comes from the section on emotional well-being. How can individuals build emotional resilience in the face of stress and adversity?
So I'm Perdita Howard. I'm the Executive Director of Counseling and Accessibility Services here. How can one build resilience? So we like to tell people, stay calm. It's kind of hard sometimes to find ways to stay calm if you're in a high-stress environment or you have a high-stress job. But to just think about it, don't react, pump the brakes. Let's just take some deep breaths and calm down. So staying calm is one. One that we don't like to think about, we all hate changes. We get complacent. So adapt to change. Change is good, even though we don't like it sometimes. Learn from our mistakes. That's why they have a eraser at the end of a pencil. Everybody makes mistakes. We're all human. So don't think it's the end of the world because you made a mistake. Learn from it, and let's move on. So, and one that I tend to have issues with, and I know my boss does, asking for help. It's okay. Delegate. We're not robots. So if you're, seamless plug, as Carl would say, if you're in a position where you have others that can help, ask for help. It's okay. You're not going to be seen as a bad person if you don't ask for help. Take care of your body, your soul, and your mind. It goes back to what Dr. Roberts said. Sometimes we volunteer to fill a void, but filling that void causes other issues. So then we have a domino effect. And then we're probably not going to be good at any of it because we're so stressed. Find the equal balance.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very important tips. And we know that a part of the stress for some was returning back to work post-COVID. And we know across the country that many individuals are returning to work. And I will tell you, I worked from home for a very long time, just my dog and I. So having to come back to an office when I started working in office, there were some adjustments that I needed to make. And so I wanted to ask a question under our social well-being. What advice would you give to individuals who struggle with building or maintaining meaningful relationships, particularly post-COVID and in the rise of what we now know as social isolation?
Hi there, everybody. Rebecca Hazlitt. I am the director of the BSW program, an associate professor of social work. So it's good to see everyone. That's a big question, right? When we think about social isolation, I think everybody in this room has certainly experienced that, especially when COVID hit. But we may also be experiencing it now. So tips for kind of emerging from that and building those relationships. The first thing that comes to my mind is giving yourself permission to be okay with your isolation to a certain degree, right? Because that's hard going from working at home to now I'm in the office, or maybe you're an introverted individual, and I think that may be a question we talk about in the future. That can be a very tough move from being very with yourself to now I am with others. But when I think about building those relationships, if they've been cut off, if we've not had those opportunities, and we've seen that with our students, we've seen that with ourselves, the first thing, other than giving yourself permission to be okay with some isolation and taking your time, would be look for ways to connect your passions, kind of what's already occurring in your life, with opportunities for connection. So that might look like, finding a specific group, maybe volunteering, like what Dr. Roberts had shared before, finding those specific opportunities that would give you more of those interactions, taking advantage of the opportunities here on campus, right, to connect with others with your interests is a really great way to go about doing that. We know COVID had a huge impact on our ability to connect and to even really want to seek those connections. So sometimes it's kind of getting over that hurdle and making yourself do it, right? As an introvert, I have to sometimes make myself do those things. Connecting with someone, going to a gathering. But I also need to know that, or remind myself rather, that taking my time with that can be okay. Finding the right connections is important, right? Quality over quantity will be important for a lot of us as we build those social relationships. So those are the thoughts that come to my mind.
Yes, I think those are very good. And when I think about the imbalance that most of us experienced during COVID, or those of us who worked remotely, there was no hard start and stop to your day. And while we thought that we were productive, many of us were really exhausted. And so, Lindsay, I want to ask, one, how do you define overall well-being? And talk to us about its importance and some practical ways in which we can measure our overall well-being.
I'm Lindsay. I'm a registered dietitian currently working in the clinical space at Atrium Health Navicent. I think well-being is definitely different for everybody. I know about me, whether how I feel, and I think that when I feel off balance, I find the places that give me balance. Whether for me, family is really big for me, and when I feel off balance, I go to them because they are kind of my balancing point. So I would say measure your well-being based off your balance point. Where do you feel the most secure? And well-being can also be, for some, is their health, where they are in their standing in health, whether that's from a very general standpoint, whether that's from a medical standpoint, and making sure you're plugging in and being proactive about how you're, managing your health and how you're taking care of yourself. So well-being is taking care of yourself and finding better ways to continue to take care of yourself.
Thank you. And I think we understand a little better how food impacts that. So now that we understand the importance of food, because I'm sure we all like to eat, we want to talk a little bit about our physical well-being. And so Carl, if you would talk to us about, one, what are some common misconceptions about exercise and fitness and nutrition, that combination that you like to debunk?
Good question. Thank you. I'm Carl Woods. I'm the Director of Recreation and Wellness here at MGA. And that's a really good question. And some of the misconceptions are that you need to spend all day in the gym to accomplish your goals or meet the tasks. And that's totally not true. And so exercise recommendations are at least 150 minutes a week of exercise. And then the other part of it is you want to make sure that you're getting a variety of exercise. So sometimes we think, I walk every day, and then on the once a month that I may do some strength training, I feel really sore. And that's because you want to make sure that you're working or exercising all your major muscle groups. And so that means spread it out, make sure you're getting being consistent and getting a variety of exercise. And then we also think when when we're working out, especially us as guys, when we're hitting the gym, that we have to, oh, I just need to eat lean meat and rice. And we heard earlier how you really have to have a variety on your palette, and that the key to that is the color scheme. Make sure you have a variety of colors on your plate, and know that as you exercise, whether that be cardio, endurance, or flexibility, you have to have the nutrients that your body is desiring in order to perform well. And so it's like a car. If you don't keep your oil changed, if you don't keep the gas in it, it's not going to run properly. And your body's the same way. And so when you're looking at your nutritional guidelines, make sure, especially if you're hitting the gym often, make sure you're putting in the proper fuels to get out what you're trying to put in.
Thank you. I love that. And is there a model that we should follow? Is there a set amount of time that we should devote to exercise daily, or what would be your recommendations regarding?
Actually, yes, ma'am.
Daily
There
exercise.
is a model. So when you break down the 150 minutes per week, that's pretty much cardiovascular. And so it depends on what your goals are. If you just want to maintain your health, then 20 to 30 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week will get you there. But if you want to lose weight, or if you want to increase muscle mass, then you need to concentrate your efforts a little bit more. And so that means increase the intensity of your workout. And then one thing that is very important is, to all of us, males and females, we need to ensure that we're getting the anaerobic fitness, and that means lifting the weights. And you can do that with body weight exercise, or you can do lightweight. You don't have to lift heavy all the time, and that's another misconception. We think we have to do the heavy weights, and you don't. Just lift weights, use your body weight, and make sure you're stretching and getting your flexibility exercise as well.
All right, thank you. So my task was to incorporate spiritual well-being in terms of how it contributes to your mental and emotional health. And so I want to tell you that there are a lot of studies that are available that describes how spirituality can impact your overall mental health and well-being. But before I talk about those, I want to set the context in terms of defining spirituality and spiritual wellness. It is the abundance of context that means different things for different people at different times and in different cultures. So it's not just about a religion, it is also about a sense of purpose, connectedness to self and others, a search for hope or harmony, a belief in a higher being, and activities that give people meaning and value to people's lives. So this is a running theme, even with Dr. Roberts' recommendations around building your community. So research notes that various kinds of spiritual practices can have a positive impact on your overall health and well-being. What it suggests is that there are lower levels of hospitalization and pain and greater survival, better cardiovascular outcomes, lower levels of anxiety and depression, as well as your overall mental health, improved coping with chronic illness and pain, a stronger immune system, a better heart health, and a longer life expectancy. So the Journal of Behavioral Medicine noted that spiritual well-being is associated with improved overall health outcomes. And so I want to just navigate back to Lindsay because I want to talk about, if we incorporate many of the things that we just described, what is a good practice that one should have in terms of our eating? I hear people all the time say, I skip breakfast and I can run with little items in the morning, or I only eat one time a day. So when we think about all of the challenges that we know that we face working in a high stress environment, returning back to work, and trying to find balance between our work and life, what are your recommendations in terms of what we should include in terms of our daily food intake?
So what I will say is health is not one size fits all, even nutrition isn't. So nutrition is not just simple, oh, I'm just going to eat this. This is a lot of science behind nutrition. If that wasn't the case, you wouldn't have registered dietitians who go to school for years and years and years. So what works for some may not work for others, but what I will recommend is that you meet all of your food goals, as in whether you're getting adequate protein, you're eating adequate fruits and vegetables, you're getting adequate fiber, and those types of things work with chronic illness. You know, if we're dealing with stress or we're dealing with not being able to balance our time, we're not able to adequately, get good nutrition. And I always will say, make sure that you are not excluding things. Exclusion does not work, and it never will work. For one, mentally, I would be sad if I said I never could eat a sweet again in my life. I would probably be sad. And I wouldn't tell anybody to do that either, because that's not reality. So everything can fit appropriately. Food does not have morality, so don't guilt yourself about having something. But don't, in the same fashion, use that grace, and take advantage of it. So I would say eat fruits and vegetables, eat fiber, good sources of protein. When we say good source of protein, like we were talking about earlier, lean meats and things like that. And don't feel bad for having a cookie a day or two,
In moderation.
In moderation, of course.
There's conflict on the panel.
Moderation, of course. And of course, if you have other health conditions and things like that, work with your doctor, work with the dietitian, because those things are very specific. And so in a very general sense, I can tell you something, but when you have a specific condition, those things are very specific. So you might need a little bit more, or me a little more restrictive.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And one issue I would like to raise is that of inflammation. And so we know that a lot of people struggle with that because of various illnesses, age, and things of that nature. Are there any food restrictions that one should consider if they are managing inflammation?
Well, with inflammation, one of the biggest things is a lot of processed foods. So a lot of things that are going to be high in your saturated fats. So sorry for our Southern people, bacon and sausage, you probably shouldn't be eating much of that, as we really do. Things that help with that are those good fats. So that's why saturated fats, you shouldn't eat as much as that, but things such as salmon, such as tuna, they have those omegas, fruits and vegetables. So that's why if you eat a really balanced diet, you will work against those inflammatory things. But when we're leaning toward those high-fat foods, or we're leaning toward those fried foods, and we're trying to get a lot more convenience foods, and I understand life is busy. So there are times when you have to do that. But if you're balancing it and you're not, eating more of this and more fatty foods and more sugary foods, you'll help with some of those inflammatory diseases and inflammation.
Yes, thank you. So when we think about these restrictions or opportunities that we will have with food and eating, part of that should be a part of our self-care routine. And we know sometimes self-care is at the opposite end of the continuum when we think about busy lives and finding balance. So can you share with us, Perdita, how does self-care play a role in our emotional health? And what are some simple practices that people can incorporate every day?
Self-care plays a very important role in our everyday activities, because I go back to the airline when they say take the oxygen. If you don't pull the mask to take care of yourself, then you're no good for nobody else. So, and like with everything, moderation. Find time for, I like to say, self-care activities, things that you enjoy, so that you can have a balance of the work-life balance. I like to take nature walks, and Carla will say, shameless plug, get out and enjoy nature. So sometimes I have to get out from behind my desk and just take 5 minutes, and I'll just walk the perimeter and come back. I'll pay for it later with my allergies, but sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do to fulfill that need of self-gratification. So things that you like to do, maybe do a puzzle. We like to tell the students they love Play-Doh, something that you can just grab, and it takes your mind off of the things that are at hand just for the moment. But we do the little pop socket things now. You can have them at your desk and nobody will know. Just sit there and pop them and take care of yourself that way. Now, I'm not going to suggest, like me, I'm a shopaholic, but sometimes shopping kind of helps that self-care aspect, and we'll pay for it later. But you have to do things that you kind of love to do that is self-gratifying.
Yes, thank you. And you noted that sometimes we use technology in this regard, and some people say, oh, I'm just scrolling, catching up on life and seeing what's happening. And so from a social well-being, how has technology, Rebecca, and social media influenced our well-being, both positively and negatively?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert specifically on technology and that impact, but I would say that I know myself and perhaps you, I often will use that as a bit of a crutch for myself, and that gets in the way of really solid interpersonal relationships. Or it serves as an opportunity maybe to express myself in a way that's not the healthiest way to share feelings or to get my needs met from a social perspective. So that has certainly impacted us maybe from the negative perspective, right? But on the other side of that, it's also a really great tool for finding those opportunities for social involvement or to get connected with those of us who maybe think similarly, especially as we've, I think, gone maybe more to our corners a bit. It's a way for us to move away from those corners, get out of our silos a smidge, and be able to hear perspectives. I think it's how you use the technology and setting personal boundaries and some limits for yourself, right? Finding some of those boundaries in many ways. Be that saying, my husband's always telling me, don't wake up doom scrolling, don't do it, right? Don't do that kind of stuff. So setting those limits, saying, do not, I'm not gonna wake up, I'm not gonna get into social media, I'm not going to access technology in that way. Instead, I'm going to find maybe the use of technology as an opportunity for finding a healthy recipe to improve my well-being, right? Or a community that does that kind of healthy cooking, those types of things. So technology can be a wonderful tool, but it also has certainly moved us away from each other in many ways. And I think we're trying to find our way back to that balance.
Absolutely. I know one study discussed how after a person has scrolled on social media, even if they entered that space with if they were happy or felt, optimistic about the day, that after scrolling, it could certainly have an impact on their outlook. And then at the opposite end of the continuum, there was a study that described how this technology does impact our sleep, particularly if it's the last thing that you do before you go to bed. And so, Carl, I would like to ask you about sleep and how does sleep quality impact overall wellness? And what tips do you recommend for better sleep?
And that's a great question. Actually, sleep has a lot to do with our overall wellness. A lack of sleep can cause disease within our body, but and then when you get enough sleep, it does energize you and prepare you for the day. And so schedule, we got to go back to when we were young, when our parents said, hey, you have to be in bed by 8 or you have to be in bed by 9. And so as adults, we should keep the same goals. Schedule your time for sleep and try to be consistent with that. And then you want to have at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And so you want to make sure that you're getting that. And so in order to ensure that you're getting some good quality sleep, then you want to set your room or your space to be that type of environment. So I can't tell you what to do, but when you have technology and your TV in the room and it's going while you're trying to sleep, you got to ask yourself, am I really getting quality sleep while I'm trying to scroll, or I can wake up and look at my phone, or my phone can wake me up from my sleep, or if I have the TV going. So you want to make sure your space is set up to where you can enjoy that quality sleep that you need and deserve. And some of us, we use sound to do that. So you can get the water trickling or wind or a thunderstorm, something like that. But just make sure that the ambiance is where you need to be, so that you can get the quality sleep that you need.
Thank you. And I heard, some chatter in the audience. I know we have moms to be and probably moms with smaller children. And although research tells us we should at least get about 7 hours of sleep, we know sometimes that we struggle with that, depending upon what else is happening in our lives. But sleep is critically important in order for us to show up as our best selves when we arrive at work. And so, Mary, when we think about our ability to have some sense of job satisfaction at work, in what ways do you feel that plays an important role in the overall well-being of individuals? And how can people find that fulfillment in their careers?
Well, we spend a lot of time at work. Most people are going to be there at least 40 hours a week, sometimes longer, depending on their job and what they do, or I know for us, sometimes certain seasons of the academic year, it's definitely more than 40 hours. And so most of the time, whether it's good or bad that's happening at work, we're going to bring it home with us. I think the more you hear people say, well, I want that job where I can just go in, do my stuff, and then come home. There's nothing to think about when I come home. And I suppose there's roles like that out there maybe. But a lot of us, no matter what's going on at work, that's going to impact us, whether it's in a negative or a positive way. So if we go to work and we love the people we work with and we get to do the things we love to do, and even if we have maybe a negative interaction with a client or a student or a customer, we love what we do so much that we're good, right? And we come home and we're happy. But what if everything's going wrong at work, and that could be a multitude of things. If you've got, bad relationships at work, or maybe you're not in the right role, or you're not grasping new information, whatever it could be, that's going to have a negative impact on you, right? And so I think all of these dimensions we're talking about play into each other. So if one of them's off, it's going to impact all the others. And so it's really important that it always goes back to make sure, like, if you're going to spend all your time, most of your time at your work, at your career, at your job, it needs to be something that is going to be a positive experience for you. And so, when we have like the student who's like, I just need to make that money, sometimes we'll see them a few years later and they realize they've made a mistake, right? Well, maybe you've got the degree that for you equaled the money, but you're not getting to spend your days the way you want to. And then sometimes too, it is environment. Like, maybe you love what you get to do, but there could be something in that work environment that's toxic, that's not right for you. And if you're not able to fix that, then again, sometimes it comes down to, okay, I've got to find where I can be happier. But yeah, it's a very important piece of wellness, and something that we shouldn't neglect, but I think too many people neglect it. They put it on the back burner. We see it with our students. They're like, oh, no, that's far away. I don't need to worry about that now. And then suddenly it's graduation time and they've gotten a degree and they haven't even started looking for that career that's going to kind of impact the rest of their professional lives. So it's something to be thinking about, even when we have a job, that, how can we make sure that occupational wellness is there?
Thank you. And so from a spirituality perspective, one of the ways that you can increase your wellness is by incorporating several kinds of practices. You can have a morning and evening ritual. Morning meditation, you can do intentional breathing, you can create a sacred space, have nature walks, as Perdita mentioned, and Carl affirms. You can have daily affirmations, and you can do all of these things in the evening as well. The second area is gratitude journaling, where you can give yourself some grace and remember that perfection is not the goal. And I always remind myself that even if today wasn't a great day, tomorrow I have a fresh start, a clean slate, and I can start all over again. And then you can incorporate a relaxation exercise, which we're going to practice, okay? So I want you to just relax, and I want you to inhale for 4, and then exhale for 7. Make sure your feet are flat on the ground. Inhale for 4, and exhale for 7. And even if you do that while you're at your desk, it can really change things. And then lastly, think about a community group that you can connect with, or build some fellowship with other people where you can learn about new things, they can learn about you, and these can create new opportunities for you. And so our last set of questions, and this will be for everyone, I want to know, what is one simple yet impactful habit that each of you would recommend for improving overall well-being?
I do not mind going first.
Okay, thank you, Carl.
Schedule time for yourself. And so that could be any time of the day, but actually put it on your calendar and stick to it. Schedule time for, whether that's for meditation, for exercise, or for your mindful breathing. Make sure you take time for you, and you'll be better off for it.
Thank you.
So I'll speak from the occupational lens. One thing I would encourage people to do, and I think it goes back to carving time for yourself. Put lunch on your calendar, and if you're a supervisor, make sure your staff does that. If they're not doing that, and they may say, "Oh, I'm good, I'll find," no, they need to put that on their calendar. While you're at work, you've got to find balance and set boundaries where appropriate. And if there is something that you're struggling with at work, instead of just bringing it home, find someone, whether it's your supervisor, typically go to your supervisor first, of course, and hopefully you've got a situation where you can do that. But talk to them about whatever it is that's bringing you down. That is very important. Don't carry it with you, take it home, and then just say, well, my only solution is just to quit. That's probably not your solution. So just look at the people you're around. And I think, one of the great things about where we work is that we have a lot of colleagues and leaders that are here to support you. So just look for those things. I think sometimes when we're in a situation where we realize that's not existent where we work, then that's kind of our clue to go, okay, this is where my balance is off. But with your work, don't just take it home with you. You've got to make sure you're doing everything you can to make that situation better too. If it's something that's bringing you down, sometimes it's just getting more training in something, because I know when we work with students and there's new issues we're dealing with, we don't all know the answers, and so it's talking to your supervisor about, hey, we ought to do this kind of training, and that. Then suddenly that morale goes up, that excitement about work goes up.
Thank you.
We've heard about putting lunch on our calendar. We've heard about carving time out for ourselves. I love these ideas. They're fantastic. What I feel like we need to do to get to that is one of the things that I've learned over the years, and I'm still learning. Choosing wisely and saying no when necessary. I think those are some of the best things you can possibly do to get that time and to take care of yourselves in all of these respects. So I would say making that a part of your wellness habit. That doesn't mean that you say no to everything, of course, right? There's some things that you have to do. But if it's not something that you can say, I have to do this, it's something that I'm relied upon, or that people are relying upon me to do, or if it's not something that you can wholeheartedly say yes to, that might be a clue that that is a no in your book. And it's okay to say no. I've had to remind myself of this, but it's okay to say no. It's okay to choose things that are going to fulfill your life so that you can get that lunch on your calendar every single day and prioritize your exercise and your walks, and find time to make healthy eating habits occur, because they don't happen otherwise, because we all tend to say yes a whole heck of a lot. So I'd say that's my one big thing. being okay with saying no.
And remembering that it is a complete sentence.
Complete sentence.
Yes. All right, Lindsay.
I would say from a nutrition standpoint, is don't let food and health stress you out. You know, it's not easy. And when you allow food to stress you out, you don't even enjoy eating. And so I would say, you know, oftentimes working with patients in the hospital, a lot of times they're learning about this new way they have to eat. And I walk away usually and I say, don't stress about it. It's okay. It's a lot, but you can do it. So from a nutrition standpoint, don't stress about it. Don't make food so stressful. Take your time. It takes time, but enjoy eating. Try new foods. Go to new places. But, you know, don't let food be the thing that adds more stress to other things that already can be stressful.
Yes, great.
Hey, from a emotional counseling aspect, I would say, first of all, let's practice being gratifying. Let's practice gratitude. If you start your day with 3 things that you're grateful for, it changes your whole outlook on things. And then, like Dr. Christie said, it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. So we have to just practice and say, today's a new day, a new start. So what happened yesterday is gone. So, and tomorrow will take care of itself. So what can we do in the present moment? Let's just practice gratitude. And the other one I was going to say, she said, say no. I like to say no to things that's going to drain you. Because if you're already in a space of not clarity, I like to say, I'm in a funky mindset. But everybody don't use those terms. If I'm already not thinking clearly, then I don't want to take on something that's going to cause me to be in a deep depression or stressed or anxious about it, I'm sorry. So always just say no to things that drains you.
Yes, and I will say from a spirituality perspective, think about volunteering, thinking about being of service to others. Social change happens when we leave our space and go and help someone who may be less fortunate than us. You can always meditate, you can pray, you can have daily affirmations. And yesterday we had a wonderful exercise on the science of mindfulness, and I learned so much. So any of these things I think can be helpful. And lastly, with reframing, which I think goes back to what Perdita and Rebecca said. Now, before we conclude, we are so delighted today to have Dr. Jimmy Smith here with us. He is the public health administrator for Macon-Bibb County, and so we want to give him an opportunity to provide some closing thoughts and remarks. Yes, we can clap for him as he comes.
Hey, everyone. Certainly, can we give another round of applause to the 6 folks up here that did a phenomenal job? As I was sitting there, I was taking notes on what everybody said, so I'll be stealing some of this to use at work next week. But I just wanted to mention a couple of things that I heard and kind of paraphrase them as to how I heard them, because whenever you speak to a group, if there are 10 in the group, you're going to get 10 different interpretations of what you said. But some of the things that I heard, we talked about using your resources, but that also meant knowing your resources, which is one of the things that you talked about. So particularly from an occupational health standpoint, knowing what resources are here within the university for the staff, for the students, and then making sure that they are accessible, but making sure that you utilize them because they are available to you. The second one, value of building relationships. So that includes not only social support, but there was also talk about technology. So keeping in mind that for some, school may be their family. Their coworkers may be their only family. Their church may be their only family members. So realizing not everyone has the same level of social support. And then the other thing when you talk about technology is keep in mind that for some, their engagement with others might be Facebook. It might be Instagram. It might be TikTok. So everyone doesn't have that same capability to do things or to interact or engage with others in the same way. I heard someone say delegate tasks when able, but I think we also need to realize that There are some that aren't in a position to do so. So depending on where you are, kind of on the totem pole of life or in your workspace, you may be the person that doesn't have anybody else to delegate to. So realize that that's a reality for some folks. Someone mentioned, is there making sure that there's a hard start and stop to your day. And I was like, man, they getting me on all this stuff because I'm guilty. But remember during COVID, because we couldn't interact, we would do Zoom meetings, WebEx, whatever. Does that get to stop at some point? It's like you work all day and then you get like, oh, I got to jump on the Zoom at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. So it almost feels like you don't have a stop to your day on many days. Defining well-being and finding your balance. So I thought about two things. One, I would encourage anyone here to think about this. Can you stop being the go-to person for people that you can't go to? Now that may hit some folks hard, but you need to stop. The second one is, and this goes back to occupational health, don't let your occupational gifts keep you in a place where your character won't allow you to stay. Because that goes to your mental well-being, that social support, that family support, your co-worker support. Just the last three. One was physical activity. So I know I have a wake-up routine. Mine's kind of odd, but it works for me every day, because if I don't do it and I get out of any of these routines, my whole day is messed up. So the first thing I do, I know that left hand is going to reach over. That's my first stretch. Because if I don't grab these glasses, everything else going downhill from there, because I can't see. So that first stretch is there. That second stretch with the right arm is going to push off on the bed to help swing my legs around to hit the floor. Then I'm going to sit there for a minute, as the old folks used to say, and test my limbs to make sure that these knees are going to hold up when they hit the floor. So I stretch the legs. Then I know I have 12 steps to the right and then a quick left to make it to the bathroom. Because if I don't get to the bathroom first, it's a bad day for the whole household. So know your wake-up routine. Now, once all that happens, okay, I can function then. You can get to the coffee, get to breakfast, do whatever you need to, but then that's my wake-up routine. We talked about cardio, increasing the heart rate, weightlifting, or doing things that can help your muscle strength. I would encourage folks to realize, check yourself if you increase your heart rate when you know it's time to eat. Because we heard talk about what you should eat, but if your heart starts to flutter and race, you're like, oh, it's almost dinner time. Is that the right kind of cardio that you might be looking for? When you talk about lifting weights or building your muscle mass, is it because your plate is so heavy that, I don't need to go to the gym? It's Sunday afternoon, and I'm going to do my due on this plate. If we're getting ready to go into Easter weekend, a lot of families are going to get together. So there are a couple of holidays that get us in trouble. Usually Easter, around 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas, maybe New Year's. So kind of cut back on your weightlifting this Sunday. The other one is stretching. Many of us do stretch, but we have to be careful. Is our stretching coming from, like in my case, reaching over to get my glasses, or is yours reaching across the table to grab something that you already had 3 servings of? Be careful when you figure out when you're doing all your stretching. Or sometimes when you talk about how we need to be engaged and look at our mental health, are you stretching to grab somebody that you really don't need to put your hands on? That's the other one. Didn't ask for an amen, but I heard it over here in the corner. The last two, spiritual health and self-care. There's a quote that I keep that says, it's a wise person that recognizes that grace is not synonymous with luck and mercy should not be mistaken for approval. There's some things that we're kept away from. It doesn't mean that it was all right. It just means somebody gave you some mercy, that things that should have happened didn't happen. So don't always equate that with approval. The last two. One, someone mentioned it, but I don't remember who, was when you talked about mental, physical, spiritual, occupational, physical, someone also mentioned financial. And financial stress can also bring about quite a bit and touch every other one. Because if somebody may be working, but feels that they're not making enough to make the other ends meet, and it becomes an extra stressor for them. And what I will close with is not one person on the stage today, and I'm glad they didn't, said anything about diabetes, hypertension, overweight, obesity. So what they talked about today was what we call those social determinants of health. And social determinants of health account for 80% of the ingredients, if you will, that contribute to our health conditions. We can put a medical code on diabetes, we can put one on hypertension, but you can't put one on work stress. You can't put one on social support. So all of those things that they talked about up here, that's the 80%. So if we have to gear ourselves to work on something, let's work on the 80, because those things that you go to your individual healthcare provider for, that's just the 20. But the root cause of that are these things that they talked about here on the stage. So that's what I'd share with you today.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. That was wonderful. And if you all will help me to thank this panel for sharing on today their great words of wisdom. We appreciate you and thank you all for coming. And this concludes our session.